So anyway, I'm going to talk to you about the countdown to Y2Q, also known as Q Day, also known as possibly the largest amount of BS you're going to hear about for the next 5 to 30 years, okay? We're going to start decrypting it, we're going to start going through it. First of all, Q Day is coming. So what is it? Well, quantum technology, as you might have heard. Who's heard of some kind of quantum tech? Who's had quantum in their inbox? Who's heard from a quantum vendor? Who's had a conversation? Even a couple of hands. Like, it's something that's having a lot of money put into it, and we're going to only hear more and more. So I'm starting the rather hackery trend of putting down all the BS so we can find out what's actually going on. Quantum technology is going to come about in a meaningful way. At some point, quantum tech is going to be, in some sense, viable. And the day that that's going to happen, according to the Cloud Security Alliance, is the 14th of April, 2030. By the way, it's a Sunday, in case you're curious. But that is Q Day, according to them. Very few people, myself included, think that it will quite happen on that date. But they think it's that. They think that's the date they've published. There's a whole article, the link's cut off, but if anyone wants it, I'll send the slides. This is something that's going to sort of be brewing on and on and on. Let's talk a little bit more about what's going on sort of under the thing. If you want to ask what is a quantum, right, in the UK you'll be shown this. This is quantum toilet paper. Okay? Genuinely, you can wipe your bum with quantum in the UK. That is an actual thing. So quantum in its easiest form is a smallest piece of something. That's all it means. Okay? A quantum leap is actually a very small movement. It's not a big thing. There are quantum effects from quantum physics that get used in quantum tech. So quantum technologies take some kind of idea that is quantum. Usually it's superposition or entanglement. We'll come to those scary words later. And we're going to go, okay, how can we make this work for us? How can we make it work in a way that is in some way useful and profitable? So that's how quantum tech's developing, all right? We will not touch too much on entanglement because not many viable technologies. But superposition is a big one that's going to come up in quite a few realms. So what will quantum affect? That's the next real question. What's it actually going to affect? And there's 4 domains. The first is quantum computing itself. You've probably heard that it breaks cryptography. Who's heard that? Yeah, pretty much most people. Who knows how and why? Fewer people, but clearly some people have been skeptical of the vendors enough that they've done their own research, and that's great. We're going to talk a little bit about post-quantum cryptography as well. Okay, PQC is becoming to be a big thing. Yeah, some people have already put their hand and say, yes, I've heard of this, I'm doing this. There were actually quite a few French teams that submitted to the NIST process. So, you know, this is a really big international effort. I'm going to give you my view, and a fairly good view, I hope, on what's going on there. Quantum key distribution. So this is where you go, okay, quantum is going to break cryptography, but what if we can use quantum for cryptography? And I'm going to show you what that might mean, some of the shortcomings, and some of the benefits in that technology. And lastly, quantum algorithms themselves. Something that is very rarely talked about is how is quantum technology going to help cybersecurity? Not just break crypto, but actually help out. Quantum devices are coming out that are going to have an effect on cryptography, how we do cryptography, how we roll out cryptography. There's a lot that doesn't really get said, so hopefully we can give that a little bit of airtime. So if you want to have a play, I actually did a quick GeoGebra. I was going to show it, but it's a bit of a faff to go between screens. So here's a QR code. It'll take you to this public kind of notebook. If you want to have a play, it just shows you how to think about certain things, the way that the angles work. It's not very advanced. If someone wants to tell you, Mark, I can do better, please do. I did, for fun, ask Crayon, the DALL-E Mini, what it thought a qubit superposition looked like. Some of them were really, really abstract, but these ones were kind of fun, I thought. And hopefully going to start a trend of asking AIs what they think we're doing in cybersecurity, because we don't have a clue, do we? Anyway, let's move on. So there were 2 algorithms. This is the most technical we're going to really get in this particular talk. These are the 2 algorithms you need to know about, okay? Shor's algorithm, here on the left, is the one that's going to break public key cryptography. Why? Because it can easily factor numbers. This little circuit, so by the way, this is how you program a quantum computer. Each of these little squares in a line looks like a musical stave. Each of the squares in a line represents a unitary matrix. The lines between the staves represent bigger matrices that affect more than one qubit. So each qubit is a line, and then each block is a gate, is a quantum gate. So it's actually quite similar to the way that you think about binary circuits. Yeah? It's just that you're doing it with matrices and quantum. So it sounds cool, but realistically, it's just a bit of maths. That's all it is, just a bit of maths. So you can do factoring in sub-exponential time. Why is that bad? Because we kind of assume, for a lot of public key cryptography, so RSA, ECC, we assume that those are hard problems. With quantum computers, I mean, they're still lengthy problems, but they're not as hard as they would be classically. And that's because of properties of things like superposition. If you see this row of H's on the left, these are Hadamard gates. They put all the qubits into superposition. Okay, that's basically how you do it. It's quite underwhelming when you show people, like, sort of, oh, here you do this, and then you do this, and now it's in superposition. What, just add that gate? Yeah, now it's in superposition. Is that it? Oh, yeah. Okay, the other one is Grover's search algorithm. Now, people will call this database search. It is not a database search. People will say that you can search the phone book in seconds. Well, you can do that anyway, for a start, but you can have an exponentially large phone book and search that in, linear time. No, you can't. People don't like it when you tell them that, but there is absolutely no algorithmic link between your name and your phone number, and that's why. The oracle, which is over here, this little U with a little, what looks like a bum over there, actually, but it's actually an omega. The oracle is the thing that sets up the relationship between what you're looking for and the data set, and an input, ideally. And then the diffuser is the thing that does the work. That's the rest of the circuit. Don't worry about the details. I'm just kind of giving you the big boxes of what's going on. The thing is, you have to repeat this diffuser, but you have to repeat it square root of n many times, and it will give you an answer. It'll actually start giving you an answer before that, but if you want to guarantee an output of a certain precision and level, you do it that many times. You have to do that every time, but ultimately, why is this an issue? Things like AES, for example, if you have a 128-bit key, put that into superposition, apply a Grover's search through the whole key space. Don't think of it as a database search, it's an algorithmic space search. At that point, you can go, okay, I know this input. I might know, say, a block of plain text and ciphertext together, a known plain text attack. I can actually extract the key with that. Very straightforward to design a Grover search around that. Okay? It takes about 20 million qubits MIT calculated that? So, it's not a trivial number. We currently have about 100, just for reference. So you know the scale about how far it's got to go. Scale for Shor's algorithm, take the number of bits in your key, times it by 3, add a bit. So if you want to break a 4096-bit key, it's going to require around 13,000 qubits at least. And that's assuming they can have stability for days. So this is the most boring slide, I promise you, but this is a run-through of what's actually going on. So how are we going to fix it? One of the answers is post-quantum cryptography. Sounds cool, isn't it? Post-quantum. We are in the post-quantum world, right? It's all marketing, really. It really is. So, the problem with cryptography is where you have to start. The problem is not quantum computers, okay? They've been theorized. They themselves don't care about cybersecurity. They would just like to increase their entropy to join the rest of the universe, and we try and stop them, right? That's all they care about. The problem is the terrible way that we do cryptography. Okay? Who's ever done a cryptographic migration? Exactly. There's a couple of people. It's very few. Why? Because traditionally, here's what happens. Oh, we need some more cryptography. Bring in the wizards. Then the wizards arrive with beards, because it's clearly a Tolkien novel. The wizards arrive, and then they do your cryptography. They give you the magic spells, the incantations, AES 256 in GCM mode. And then they go to the pub, and you never see them again, and they just send you an invoice, okay? That's how we do cryptography, and it is abysmal. It's about as agile as a boat that has already sunk and already has barnacles on the side. It is not agile at all. So you're going to hear this phrase, crypto-agility. Let's have a quick look at where quantum affects. So we're all very familiar with this, confidentiality, availability, integrity, okay? We're also familiar with things that are around that kind of technology. So we have certificate management, TLS, we have things like digital signatures. All of these things are actually affected by quantum technology. Some things aren't. Your data classifications are fine, okay? Your infrastructure administration is probably fine, okay? Your identity management that you link to your administration, that's less fine, okay? The digital signatures that you use to secure those particular things, whether it be software or hardware attestation, or, you know, if you're doing some work on the blockchain, sorry, then, you know, there are potential things that are going to be affected, and in different ways. Hashing is probably okay, but it depends in what way, and it depends how. There's no universal answer. Some people will say, hashing is fine. It's not that simple, okay? Any questions, please do email me. Well, this is a quick overview for where things are affected. You will hear this, store now, decrypt later. And it's a bit of a misnomer, okay? The idea is, we store everything encrypted, then when we get a quantum computer big enough, we break it. Well, there's a problem. If you do that, and you've got everything, suppose you've got all the data, literally all of it, you've now got a data problem, which is also not very tractable even with a quantum computer. But the solution is an attacker would focus on harvesting sensitive encrypted data, things that they know is valuable. Okay? Things that might go between, say, 2 VPN endpoints, at which point then they might want to do some kind of BGP manipulation attack. Okay? Targeted store now, decrypt later is a threat. I don't particularly think that general store now, decrypt later is a threat. Okay? So we should actually focus our PQC efforts on the remediation cycle around key links. Okay? We should start there. That's what I think we should do. There are two concepts you should consider when doing this. One is data depreciation. So how much I paid for coffee this morning only mattered at the point I was buying coffee. If you're profiling me for coffee, it's very easy to find out what coffee I really like, just ask me. But if you're going to use my credit card transactions to try and profile me for coffee, right, then that data is still useful, but it's only as useful as other data points as I carry on buying coffee in time, right? So data's value actually depreciates and moves around. A colleague of mine, Victoria Kumaran, who is the co-conspirator for the Quantum Village coming to DEF CON 30 this year, more on that later, she had a great idea about using a notion from finance, which is data amortization, right? Accurately determining a good model for the value decrease in data is going to help you model where you should pay attention to first when you're working out what, how, and where, and when you move to post-quantum cryptography, okay? These are just enterprise-level tools. Why am I speaking at a conference like this for that? Because some people here are from enterprise, and the rest consult to enterprises, okay? Or would like to. And this is how, honestly, I think you should think about it. I might be wrong, please do tell me. But these are two ideas that have been sort of bandied around. We're publishing a paper later in which this idea of amortization will appear. But we need to think about some more things. Now, you might have heard a gentleman called Wim Schwartau. Who's heard of him? This is where every hand goes up, please. We sang happy birthday. Okay. Wim talks a little bit about a thing, I think he called it base time security. No, security time-based. Sorry, time-based security. And actually, someone has done some work in quantum, post-quantum cryptography and the movement of an enterprise thereby on the timing of it. So here, Y is the time it takes to implement post-quantum cryptography. Who thinks it can be done in months? Good. Who thinks it takes years? Who thinks it would take a decade easily? Yeah, everyone with a hand up now is probably right. We don't know. No one's really done it. But everyone gets screwed worldwide at the same time with this, so we're going to find out, really. The idea here is that you have to take into account also X. Now, X is the time that data has to be kept secure. Okay? Who works in an organization that doesn't have that requirement? Yeah, exactly, everyone does. Okay, so as long as your time to implement plus your time to store is less than the time it's going to take, Z, for all the quantum threats to materialize, then you will be fine. What does that look like? It looks like this. That's April 14th, 2030. The UK police only required to keep data for 2 years. They've got a bit of leeway. Okay, commercial data is required to be kept for 4 years in general. Tax records in most of Europe is about 7 years. Okay, mortgages, government bonds, I mean, if you start digitally signing those, you might need to go up to 50 years. You have to have cryptography, good, for 50 years. Good luck. Any solution, by the way, coming to market must improve that Y estimate. That's a key takeaway. When you're asking vendors, when you're interrogating them, that is the key question. So a brief interlude on how RSA sort of is different, say, to things like lattice-based cryptography. This is the hard problem. As you get from, say, 1 billion, 10 to the 9, you have underneath that nearly 51 million primes. Okay? As you get to 10 to the 12, which is a trillion, you get 37.6 billion primes, okay? Because you can always find new primes, always find new primes popping up. The fact that this number grows-ish fast, it's approximated by x over log x for the curious. The fact that that number grows quite well is actually what keeps it secure as the numbers get really, 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 really big. Okay? And then we use big numbers for RSA. 1024 bits is a really big number. And then we assume that there's some kind of security under that. Right? And that's a relatively safe assumption. But lattice-based crypto, you need to use things like this. This is a two-dimensional version of the closest vector problem. So you set up a lattice of points, which are defined by 2 basis vectors in this case. You choose a random point, and then you go, where's the nearest vector? Now, if you don't know certain parts of this problem, you can create a very hard problem. A related problem is called the shortest vector problem. So the 2 long vectors present a 0 vector. These are actually very bad choices, by the way. Please do not take this as a way of doing it properly. It is not. But you take the 0 vector and then find the blue vector, which is the shortest vector around that. This is in the triangle lattice, okay? This doesn't look very hard until you realize that in 3D, you start getting things that look like this. So you can see, this is from a company called Talasys, who I do a lot of work with, a really great blog post here on lattice-based crypto. But you can see here what it looks like that you've got to find more and more and more points that line up. There's more and more possibilities as the lattices get bigger and more multidimensional, okay? This is kind of what's going on under the hood for those who need a kind of an intuition on it. Now, short-term fixes is the usual stuff. Pump up everything up to maximum key lengths. AES-256 in GCM mode is actually really secure because GCM mode gives you that tag, which is actually quite hard. It adds more complexity. The more complexity you add, the more quantum resources are required. And at the moment, quantum resources are quite scarce, okay? So even at store now, decrypt later, you know, the more complexity you have, it presents slightly more of a problem. Maybe someone will find a really nice attack that breaks GCM mode. I don't know. But I suppose we're going to find out the hard way. But it doesn't hurt to also use what we might refer to as loosely very good to best practices. More long-term fixes, you need a crypto-agile framework for the cryptography that you use. Okay? When we actually have those kinds of frameworks coming to market, coming to fruition, that is when we're going to have a better time in life, okay? There's another slide here, which is really, if you want to take a photograph of it, please do. It just summarizes the things that I've already just said, okay? So let's move on. Crypto agility, what do you need? You need to think about hybrid solutions. We're not going to have NIST take over our entire networks. We're also going to have to maintain things like FIPS compliance. Everyone who does anything with large amounts of data that involves certainly personal identifiable information usually either is required to or uses FIPS as their baseline. NIST has been very quiet on what FIPS is going to be, or how FIPS is going to be affected by that. So what you need to do is think about a hybrid approach, okay? And then think about how that's going to work. Actually, FIPS does allow you to have other ciphers in your key management and key generation. It doesn't like it, but it's allowed in a very particular circumstance. And so people have started exploring, and you can read up on these things. There's a good paper which we're going to get to at the end, which covers it off. So when will PQC be commonplace? We're currently in 3rd round. Rainbow fell off quite dramatically because it couldn't be broken on a quantum computer, but it could be broken on a laptop. which means it also could be broken on a quantum computer as well, by the way. So these are the finalists. Any day now, at some point, very soon, we think in the next 2 months, we're going to get a list of ciphers, and that's when the real work begins. That's when we have to wait for standardization, we have to wait for reference code implementations, we have to get actual protocols. There's still a time delay inherently in this, which we need to start addressing. Okay? And actually, does that mean that we should just wait for NIST? I don't think so. We should start playing and toying with these things sooner rather than later. So next up, I'm going to give you a quick whirlwind about quantum key distribution. Quantum key distribution is just using quantum mechanics to do a key exchange, and here's how it looks. So you have Alice on the left here and Bob on the right. Alice chooses one of the 4, okay? And then Bob chooses one of his 2 measurement bases. Then Alice sends a photon over a line, okay? And then there's a measurement at the other end. And whether things match up on a random basis determines the key. If you really want to go into it, this is a protocol called BB84, Bennett and Brassard, 1984. There's an updated one that uses entanglement called Eckert91 or E91. These are the magic words to Google. But this has some issues. So if it is so good, why have you not seen QKD installed in an office block near you? Here's why. Classical cryptography doesn't care how you use it. It'll work on Wi-Fi, it'll work on carrier pigeon, okay? I wouldn't advise that, but it will work, okay? You write the numbers on a thing, tie it to the leg, and then you get a key, okay? That, however, is not the case for QKD. The mathematics that makes QKD secure is exactly and intrinsically related to the physicality of the actual photons and line that it's going over. All right? And because of that, things like packet switching and other like standard networking concepts don't work. You can't look at a photon and read the IP address because you've looked at it, and that defeats the object. Okay? It's a point-to-point protocol. It was designed in the mid-'80s, right? It's a point-to-point protocol. So what the EU, one of the big things the EU is pushing for is a quantum internet. All right? What does that look like? Yes, all the buzzwords. Just take a word, put quantum in front of it, you've got a startup. You just need to find the physics students. That's basically how that comes about, right? I am joking. I do have a lot of respect for a lot of quantum startups. This is how the quantum internet will work. You have entangled pairs between different points. You then sort of do something with a state you like, and then that state can be made to move quantumly over to a different location. All right? That's basically how it goes. You'll see this kind of thing pop up a lot. You'll see things like this. This is an article, if there's a QR code, which I was quoted at length by Davey Winder on, where there was a satellite company offering QKD services. And there's some interesting questions there, and hopefully you've got some interesting questions now, so that when they literally turn around to you in a vendor call and go, we are going to secure your network with space lasers, and you're like, oh my God, space lasers, I love it, it's amazing, you actually get some good questions to ask, okay? All right, how do you challenge a QKD vendor? Okay, is your product service cloud ready? What happens if someone cuts the fiber line? How do you secure your satellite base against eavesdropping attacks caused by atmospheric dispersion? I don't have many friends in the QKD space. Whilst QKD does offer a solid solution, and I do believe that it has a lot to offer, there are many, nearly a dozen attacks that I can name. These are 4 of my favorites. I have another 4 papers if you want to read. Yeah, QKD's been hacked. And yeah, you see the dates like 2020, 2018, 2011. Like, people have started to break this technology, but curiously, there's no CVEs or CWEs for it. You can't look it up. If you're a CISO, you have no way of knowing. But that doesn't mean there's no attack. If you're a physicist, you know what to do because you go on archive. But if you're not, then how are you supposed to do it? Shouldn't these be like given numbers now? They've been around for a while. Here's an uncomfortable thought. So QKD has a lot of promise, but it's been 38 years. enterprise MVP solutions for QKD are, well, I haven't found one yet. I'd love to be wrong. Toshiba will probably be emailing me after this telling me that they have one. I don't know. I've not been in touch with them. But does that mean that viability of this technology is hard? Yes, it's very hard. I think it's harder than anyone actually envisaged. I'm going to move on to a slightly different topic as I go into the final few minutes. I actually think that there is a good case for using quantum algorithms in security. And I'm going to give two examples. The first is quantum random number generation, okay? Now, you might have used true RNG. Who's used a true RNG system? Like Zener diodes in conflict with an amplifier. Yeah, a couple of people. Okay, brilliant. So like, those things rely on quantum effects, but QRNG is a little bit different. So a brief history of random number generation for LCGs, PRNG seeded by quantum shot noise, and then actually seeding from a quantum computer, right? They are different. QRNG offers you something which you don't get from a true random number generator. It offers you a thing called device independence, if you do it right. Depends if you do it right. But if you do, then you can actually start to measure and attest the quality of those random numbers based on the physics of the system generating it. That's the nice bit. That's the bit you don't get. When you have a noise generator and you're just taking some binary stream, you can't ask the noise generator how its Tuesday is going, right? Because it's busy just going, you know. However, I can ask a quantum computer, how is your Tuesday going? And it goes, I'm fine. Here are my measurements. Here's my drift. Here's my entropy. And this is how you're going to have numbers. And it's not just cybersecurity, like gaming, financial modeling, scientific modeling, and cryptographic key generation. All of these have a use for quantum random number generation. They are potential use cases. A very different way that these things might help is to do with using quantum computers to to calculate problems in security. Who's heard of attack graphs or attack networks? Yeah, a couple of people. Brilliant. Oh, excellent. Wow, more than anywhere else. So these are basically when you take security vulnerability data and you apply graph theory to it. All right? Certain questions in graph theory on certain well-constructed, very nice graphs that code attack or vulnerability data will give you interesting answers. However, as those networks grow, they become more and more intractable in the computational power required to process them. I mean, all you want to know is what patch should I apply where and when. And you know that there's like a 6 out of 10 that if you patched it everywhere, would fix a lot of problems, because it sits on more kill chains, which are just paths to an attack graph. But you don't know where they are, and finding them is difficult. Maybe we can use quantum computers to do this. I think so, and I've got a paper forthcoming which will hopefully elucidate that. Okay? You're using things called QUBOs, quadratic unconstrained binary optimization, or optimizers. QUBO problems are solving graph problems, but in a quantum computer. Well, you can solve them in a quantum computer. Not a regular one you've heard from IBM, a D-Wave in particular, because it's a quantum annealing process. But maybe one day, each industry will have their own quantum computer setup where they have access to a QPU, and they can solve these problems really, really quickly. Okay, we keep talking about time, we keep talking about speed. That's really been a theme the last couple of years, and that's really great. Maybe quantum can help that with big intractable data problems. I don't know, maybe not, but we're going to see. Okay, some conclusions. The best defense against and in light of a potential quantum threat is to embark on a journey of self-education. Unfortunately, they haven't put this into schools. There is no SANS course on even on post-quantum cryptography yet. I'm sure there will be. But as it stands at the moment, the only way you can really learn is by doing it yourself. So here are some helpers. The first are books. I'm a bookworm. Who here is also a bookworm? Yes, quite a few people, good. Books are really cool. There are two books in particular. One is Post-Quantum Cryptography by Bernstein et al. Yes, it's really good. It covers everything off. It's a little older now. It doesn't have a lot of stuff in it that has come out recently, but it's a really good starting point, especially for things like the variations of things like SVP and other problems. The other is a book called Quantum Computing and Applied Approach by Jack Hidary. This book is actually, I was surprised how cheap this was as a textbook. I think it's about 30 euros, around that, which is, when you think of it, it's from Springer. It is published by Springer, and it's actually very cheap. It's intentional. It's designed to be comprehensive. So it's in 3 parts. The first part is, what are quantum computers? What's going on? The second part is, what are quantum algorithms? What's going on? And the third part is, for all the high school maths that you didn't pay attention to or / forgot, like, there's the maths you need as well. It's fairly straightforward linear algebra. Because quantum information theory, when you take away the physics, is just a bit of linear algebra, okay? Put the physics back in, it's a lot more fun. But take the physics out, it's quite straightforward to understand. So I would recommend these 2. I'm sure there are others, but let's just start with these. You might want to look at a paper. A really good one is from Sandbox AQ. David Joseph is the lead. This is on transitioning organizations to a post-quantum cryptographic world, or to post-quantum cryptography. And it's quite a short paper. It's on Nature, so you should have to spend much monies for it. But if you Google it with the word file type :PDF, which I don't advise you do, because that would be terrible, you would find the Sandbox website where they hand it out for free. This is a really good paper. It's a really good overview, and actually the conclusions are in concordance with what I've been saying, because actually some of the things I've actually put into my slides because they were really good. And this was published in Nature. Tanya Langer, I think, was one of the main reviewers on it. And lastly, we're going to have a look at some resources, so websites and libraries. There's a thing called Qiskit, which you might have heard of. It's IBM's quantum offering. It's the name of their library. So you go to a Python file, you pip install Qiskit, and then you import Qiskit, and then you can do quantum. Honestly, you can do it that way. But then you need to know what to do. And that's where things like the Learn function, the Learn website, are really, really good. IBM Quantum also lets you have free access to a quantum computer. Yes, free. Free as in free to not understand what it is, maybe, but free all the same, okay? That is a really big thing. If you want to spend a little bit of money, you can go into like AWS, Braket, where they have access to really nice quantum computers. The IBM ones are also really nice, but the AWS ones can be a little bit spenny for some good time. And there's also, once you've absorbed all of that information and you're rolling and you're a quantum hacker and you want to do even more, well, that's where you can go to the quantumalgorithmzoo.org. Yes, it's a real website. And they will show you plenty of algorithms which you can sort of, with write-ups and links to papers and updates and all that kind of thing. There is also, coming to DEF CON, shameless self-promotion from me, I'm afraid, because I'm a co-organizer. But this year at DEF CON, we are bringing a quantum village. We have all sorts of ideas. If you'd like to hear more, do come and say hi. Look at our website, quantumvillage.org. There's a QR code and the logo. We're going to basically start going, right, quantum is clearly going to be something. Let's get people involved as early as possible. And so with that, I say merci, I say thank you very much, I say any questions and comments. I am Mark, better known as Large Cardinal, or Extra Large Cardinal these days, and I will take any questions. I think I've got like 20 seconds, but thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
I got a question.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
My real hair.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to be happy. In the real world today, our QKD is coming along. Can you address QKD and the enterprise effectiveness versus lava lamps?
You mean QRNG?
Yes, sorry, yes.
Yeah, QKD is the cryptography thing. That's fine. So QRNG versus lava lamps. The lava lamps are based on an old idea from the 50s, actually. And Cloudflare famously put it into their office in San Francisco. You can go and take a selfie. You can go inside, ask for a random number. They give you a random number. And actually, they use that as one entropy source going into their overall protection scheme, just for reference for anyone who didn't know. That is a random source. It is a chaotic source, chaotic dynamics, but it's not quantum randomness. It's still chaotic dynamics that are based on the thermal motion of a fluid, right? So you can actually have quantum effects that are measurable now, kind of quantum random number generation, where you have shock noise. So whenever a photon, like a microwave photon, hits an antenna, it generates noise necessarily, and you can measure that. And these are all kind of like sort of fairly passive ways of doing it. They used to be called, or still called, true RNG, TRU. And that's been really important for a long time. The difference is, and what you're starting to see products come about, is that QRNG, you can measure it. So you're able to say, you're able to apply a level of quantum metrization. There are some companies I can name but won't. But they're basically doing metrization so that you can say to the device, okay, here's the random numbers and also what was your particular state or status at the time. And that's the difference. You can also do things called device-independent random number generation. That's where you have random number generation, and the output is random, but there's kind of a quantum game played between two parties that verifies that the machine was really random, because the output then should have a particular bias. So it outputs 4 bits. Those 4 bits should have a bias in them, which is optimal to a particular threshold that beats the classical equivalent. And so because of quantum mechanics and quantum effects and the work that's been done, you can gain that kind of advantage of not just getting random numbers, but also random numbers that you can actually verify. And that's going to be important, say, in finance. If you're doing simulations with quantum random numbers, you can't just say to the auditor, oh, the quantum magic woo-woo box told me to sell. It wasn't Dave on WhatsApp. No. It was the quantum magic woo-woo box for sure. You have to be able to prove it. And people want to do this. They want to put those things in those places. And we're like, but you have to add like some kind of measurement and justification for it. So the more you see these technologies come into different situations, if it went into gambling, for example, you'd need to be able to verify it wasn't just going 10, 10, 10, 10, because that would lose the game. So hopefully that gives you an overview about where QRNG is sitting. It's an interesting idea. So it exists. Sorry, the question is what I'm describing now current technology? It exists. You can buy one. You can buy one and plug it into a network. You can trial it. You can do simulations with it. Open questions. Does it actually give you advantage in your machine learning training or in your simulations? We think so, but there's an open question. There is a paper that came out yesterday that I need to read, which says yes, and that's very interesting. But these are usually university spin-outs. So you haven't seen AWS provide these devices in their cloud that you can plug into a system yet. So we're some way off having that kind of access. But I think that's going to happen fairly soon, the way things are going. So it is actually a real thing. It's a quantum advantage you can have right now without having to wait for more helium to be found in the universe. Any other questions? Yeah, there's one back there. We'll get you a mic.
Thank you. First of all, sorry if my question is nonsense. My knowledge on the quantum physics is very limited. But the concept of quantum socket is very interesting to me. Using entangled particles to transfer data over 2 points in space. Is it a fiction, or are we going to see this in our lifetime? Since I'm very curious about your opinion, since you're doing the math.
As I'm aware of it, and I preface this with the as I am aware, because like papers come out all the time, and I'm a mathematician, not a physicist really, so I'm not always up to speed on some of the physics stuff that goes on. But as I'm aware of it, it is a current technology. You might have heard of various experiments to do with quantum teleportation between Earth and a satellite. Yeah. That is using an entangled pair. So we can actually send entangled photons to 2 sites, and then we can do something here with a message, and then we can send that state up to the satellite and get the predicted outcome. So we know that actually we can generate entangled pairs and we can like split them off. How's that going to look when it actually comes to the quantum internet? I'm not sure. Some people have theorized you're going to have like an entanglement station where both 2 parties walk up, plug 2 things in, charge them up with entangled photons, and then walk off, right? And then, when they do their communications. I don't know. That sounds like science fiction, but I mean, so did quantum computers 20 years ago or 40 years ago. So I think it's something that is being worked on for the quantum internet, because you can't do packet switching, so you have to do something else. And there is a company I'm aware of who are building these kind of entanglement bridges. So they know they can do entanglement like 10 meters, it's more, but call it 10 meters. And then they have another repeater, and then they have another repeater. And my first question is, great, how do you secure the repeaters? And then they kind of ended the call. Well, I don't mean to be like that, but like sort of like...
You do.
Yeah, I do. But it's a very natural question. So, I mean, there's plenty of scope for like, looking at these things through a hacker's eyes and actually going, okay, what can I find? And this is hopefully what we're going to see when we do QV at DEF CON as well. We're just going to let a load of hackers loose with quantum tech. It both will and will not be amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? There's the one here. Lovely.
Regarding short-term fixes,
yes.
What do you think about algorithms like bcrypt, which allow you to dynamically change the number of iterations to make it stronger?
Yeah.
Do you think it's quantum safe?
Okay, so that's the hashing question, which I avoided in this presentation. I'll give you the brief overview. Hashing of files is probably safe no matter what you use, except for the known bad ones, right? The reason I say that is, if you go from 10 gigabytes to 200 characters or 200 bits or whatever, right? 256 bits. If you go from that size to that size, you've thrown away so much information, you've thrown away so much, stuff, that it's very difficult to recoup that. So that's the first stage. Then you're looking at bcrypt. So bcrypt has the variable iterations. It's another parameter. I think you might be able to do it in a quantum circuit. I've not done it, but I would think you might be able to. But you've probably increased by a significant amount some of my quantum resources required to do that. But then again, is it worth doing it if I have to go through an entire, say, I don't know, blockchain's worth of hashing, right? That's not trivial. Right? Where it might affect things is actually for password hashing, where actually you do tend to use things like scrypt and bcrypt and that kind of thing. Well, password hashing, the input is generally shorter than the output, and you can generally predict what the input lengths kind of are, if it's just passwords or even passphrases, to a certain point and degree. There's lots of discussion. So is that going to be affected? Maybe. I think that you would need to have a very solid indication case. But I am absolutely there with you. If you do use, obviously, salt, if you salt password or salt inputs, if you then add other parameters as well, which are inherently random, you increase that overall entropy, and that will just naturally increase the quantum resources. Will it be enough? I actually don't think I can tell you right now. But that's the right line. I think what you're thinking is exactly the right lines.
Thank you.
Greg.
Hello, Mark.
Oh, hi. Thank you very much.
I think my question is rather simple for you. How far along are you, in your mathematical community at verifying true quantum randomness in either key or number generation?
I think mathematically we're already there. And the reason I say that is because we do have ways of metrizing devices and metrizing quantum computers, and we can actually adjust the output from a quantum computer with the known error for each individual qubit. You can do that on IBM right now. That's the thing you can do. You can ask, at the time you submit the circuit, you can ask for the current status of the qubits, and then you can adjust the noise level that you've got for each individual bit as it comes out. And then you can play these games. So the games I'm talking about are things called Bell inequalities, which people might have heard of, which are basically where you have non-locality. What that means is you're doing something quantum, probably with entanglement. That's basically what it means. And there's a thing like there's a Clauser-Horn-Shimoni-Holt, CHSH game. That's the game I was referencing earlier. What is that? We have two referees, they flip a coin, and then you have the quantum Alice and Bob in the middle, right? Referee 1 tells Alice what to do, referee 2 tells Bob what to do, and although if you were to try and guess up the referees and the quantum in the classical sense, you would win the game like 75% of the time. So most of the time, but you'd be wrong a measurable amount. But with quantum mechanics, it goes up to you'll win 85.3% of the time, specifically cosine squared of pi over 8. And the reason for that is the fact that you've introduced entanglement and non-locality within the quantum system that you're generating random numbers from. And so you can check, you can go along and you can say, okay, the referees are random, so you get 2 random bits, but the whole system is quantum, and you can verify that that is actually true. And so with that, you're able to actually again go, oh yes, the quantum magic woo-woo box really was operating in a quantum magic woo-woo way. As opposed to, you know, Dave just messing with the switches. Because Dave can only be right 75% of the time messing with the switches. That answer the question? Any others? One more? One more. And I think, if that's okay, by the way, I mean, you tell me to get off the stage.
I'm having fun.
Are there any practical advices for secure coding, for example? I don't know, Python libraries or NPM libraries that should be used for encryption, for example? Because now we currently recommend AES and RSA for encryption. And okay, it's in 8 years, maybe.
Maybe. That is the big question. That's the really important question. So quite how we tackle that is what's going to define the way that we build cryptography soon. What we should focus on is building cryptography that can move those ciphers in and out much more easily, where you have an encrypt call in software that then finds the best possible based on a pre-configured configuration, and then uses that in the production environment or in the actual usage case for the communications that need to be secured, okay? We should be building crypto-agile APIs like that. Instead, what we do is we have encrypt AES 128 GCM, and we have those kinds of function names, and then the input goes in. Whereas actually, a lot of that function name should become a parameter, which is perfectly doable. Like the SMN theorem's been around for nearly 100 years. So we can do that, that's fine. But we don't build cryptography that way, and that's more the problem. So it's that left shift. I know that's a terrible phrase. I'm so sorry. Please don't kill me. But it's that left shift that's actually really important, because that's the understanding. And there's the ability to go, oh, like Rainbow. Rainbow overnight was taken off the NIST list because someone worked out you could break it on a laptop, which is just bad. And that's fine. Like, this is the exploration we're going through. But suppose someone did that to SHA 512 tomorrow. Could we move it out in time? Probably not. Like, we still haven't moved out MD5 in quite a few places. So let's focus on the things we can. No, these are really hard problems, and almost intractably so. And that's really the issue that I think we're dealing with. So yeah, you're exactly right asking how can we build it? I think by saying, okay, crypto agility is a thing. We're going to build our crypto libraries in that way. And then when we have the NIST code that is the standard for the best possible cipher that fits my use case and whatever, I can just go, and it's in. Ideally, it's in as seamlessly as possible. As a developer, why do you care, right? You shouldn't care. You should just be able to go encrypt, decrypt, done, right? Because you're busy trying to solve other problems. That's not your area of expertise, that's okay. I mean, we do that with graphics cards. Do I select the GPU sets that I want to use for CUDA? I mean, I can do, and some people do, and they're whiz-bang experts, but like, if I just have a graphics card, the code uses it, and it uses it in the best possible way it can work it out. So like, we're agile in plenty of places is my point, but not in cryptography, and that's the problem.
Thank you.
I think we'll finish it there, I think.
On that note, Dr. CARNEY, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.